Right, Rahul, and even as we speak, these are first visuals that we're getting of Prime Minister Narendra Modi stepping out of the plane dressed in a white kurta pajama and the trademark Nehru jacket. He's actually an ambassador for India, not dressing up in a formal Western suit, but in a traditional Indian attire. That he's meeting people who've gathered here to welcome Prime Minister Modi in Brisbane. This is the first visit by any Indian Prime Minister to Australia in 28 years. Modi looking at big takeaways from his G20 visit to Australia. He'll be meeting several international leaders today in Brisbane before the G20 summit kickstarts tomorrow. The Prime Minister is expected to start his India-Australia bilateral with a visit to the Queensland Technical University this afternoon. This will be followed with a meeting with the British Prime Minister David Cameron. Finally, Modi will be ending his day with a dinner with the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Prime Minister looking quite upbeat. He's just arrived from Myanmar, where he was attending the ASEAN and East Asia Summit. He, of course, also met several leaders there, including Barack Obama, who described him as a man of action. The Prime Minister also addressed the summit and looked at improving trade ties between ASEAN countries and India. Of course, this visit by Narendra Modi to Australia also has a strong trade and commerce agenda. Modi will be meeting business leaders as well in Melbourne. As we're reporting, close to 500 CEOs expected to meet Prime Minister Modi. Lots of excitement in Australia, Sydney especially, gearing up for a mega event. Rahul Kawal, TV Today's managing editor, is with us on the phone line. Rahul, Narendra Modi finally arriving in Brisbane. He's being ferried away in a white limo there on our screens. And you were taking us through his schedule today. He's got a packed schedule. He's expected to meet lots of international leaders, and of course his agenda for G20 is also very clear. Black money especially is an issue that he's likely to take up.
See, because of the different taxation norms in the various countries of the world, they haven't yet been able to get a complete fix on black money. The Prime Minister, his delegation, his officials who've been setting the grounds for the Brisbane dialogue have been focusing on black money as one of the key pivot points that the Prime Minister would like to focus on. There is increasing consensus amongst the top nations of the world that this whole business of having countries which are completely opaque when it comes to their tax structures is not something that is okay. That needs to change. But we've seen a lot of high rhetoric. Whether it translates into any reality is what needs to be seen. Remember, the G20 is an institution that was created in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. The 2008 G20 summit, the 2009 summit was huge successes because world leaders got together. They agreed on pumping up investments into the economy. You'd remember that's when the Indian stimuli package, the first round, was agreed upon. And at that time, the G20 was seen as an effective solution. G7 was seen as highly restrictive. The G20 was seen as a more inclusive system, which included not just the global advanced economies, but the emerging economies as well. Over the past couple of years, because that fear or that, that whole catastrophe which loomed earlier has eased, the G20 has lost some of its teeth. Now, if these leaders together in Brisbane, at the end of this dialogue, can actually come up with a concrete action plan, not just words, but words that lead to tangible action, which provide a roadmap for working against black money, which provide a roadmap for actually sealing and implementing the free trade facilitation agreement, which provide a roadmap for increasing investments in infrastructure, which are some of the things that are on the agenda. Only then will the G20 be seen to be relevant even now. Otherwise, there is a sense amongst some of the academics and intellectuals that we're speaking to that the G20 was effective when there was a big threat, when people felt that the world economy was collapsing. That time it worked really well. But now that there is no threat, is it still as relevant, is it still as meaningful as it was in 2008 and 2009? So the Prime Minister is a big believer, we are told, in the G20 format itself. And so are other nations, which is also why all the world leaders have come over here. But let's see whether they can get together and actually put out a roadmap which leads to the results that everyone's expecting or hoping for.
Absolutely, Rahul. You're saying that world leaders actually pushing for big takeaways from the G20 summit. Important to also know that Prime Minister Modi has also been pushing for bilaterals here with international leaders.
Oh, absolutely. And he's got a whole series of bilaterals. And I spoke to Syed Akbaruddin. the spokesperson, the Ministry of External Affairs, and he said that they were just deluded. They were just, overwhelmed by the number of requests that came in for bilateral meetings. In fact, David Cameron wanted to stop over in India on his way to Australia, but the Indian Prime Minister was already in Myanmar, so that didn't happen. He's meeting with the Prime Minister of Canada, the world leader, the head of state of Mexico. He's meeting also with the French and the British Prime Ministers, as I said. So there's a whole series of meetings that are taking place. And remember, wherever he's going, he's also affirming the importance of Japan in the equation that he's been able to form with Shinzo Abe. A dinner together in the evening is something which, so he's working on those relations that are most important, building them, nurturing them from the start that he's been able to get, and taking it forward to the next level by increasing and bringing into his fold those leaders he hasn't been able to spend time with. And he's maintaining a very, very punishing schedule. It's quite superhuman, the kind of schedule that he's maintaining day after day, week after week, and that hasn't eased at all since the 16th of May when he was announced as Prime Minister, and he had a very busy campaign schedule as well. How this man does it, I don't know, but that's the schedule that he's maintaining.
Absolutely, Rahul, and Modi also looking at expanding people-to-people ties. He's looking at connecting with the Indian community in Australia. You've been reporting on how massive preparations are underway in Sydney for that event that's expected to take place at the Alphonse Arena on Sunday.
Absolutely, Monday actually. 17 is when the big event will happen at the Alphonse Arena in Sydney. Now, the thing, Sini, is that the Indian community in Australia, as also in several other countries, is usually divided into a Gujarati lobby, into a Bengali lobby, into a South Indian lobby, into a Punjabi lobby. And they're very often at cross purposes with their own politics, their own drive. What Modi's been able to do, see, if you look beyond just the pomp and the show of the Bhangra, the Gidda, the Garba and the Dandiya, is actually bring these communities together, get them to put India's interests first, because we've now got so many people coming up to us and saying, we can set up the Australian Prime Minister, we can get you the Australian Finance Minister, would you like to spend? Actually use the Indian community and all the people who are doing wonderfully well, whether it's in business, whether it's in academics, whether there's intellectuals, sporting icons, to use them as ambassadors for India who will push India's cause in Australia, not just push their own cause, which these people have done and done so well for so long, but actually push India's cause. I think each country he goes to sees a coming out party of sorts for the Indian community there, and more importantly, it at least sets the basis for a relationship to be forged where all these communities come together as one, keeping India's interests first. That's the attempt. Now, whether that's sustainable or whether internal politics will derail this process over a medium term, we don't know the answers to any of those questions, frankly. But what it does is, it brings these people together. And I was amazed, Simi, at some of the responses from young people. They were born and brought up in Australia, had very little connections with India. Some of them said, actually, because of the mess in India, all the problems, we were earlier quite disgusted and wanted to distance ourselves from our India roots. And several of those people said that things have changed since Modi came. They now feel that they want to be part of the India story. They feel that Australia is not growing as fast. India is the hot place to be. India is the coolest place to be. And they want to come and make in India. They want to be part of the India story. Some girls I spoke to, and we played out their interviews yesterday on Headlines. They said they've actually started learning Hindi because they feel embarrassed that they're Indians and they can't speak Hindi and they only speak English. Right. Earlier, you would have thought that people would have thought that it's cool to speak English and not speak Hindi and it didn't really matter. But that's the change one person has been able to drive. And if you come here, speak to members of the community, speak to them about the impact that Modi's had, it's quite overwhelming to see how much one person has been able to change and in how little a period of time, Sini.
Absolutely. The euphoria in the Indian community abroad are quite evident. We saw it in the Madison Square Garden event and in that event that's been organized in Sydney. Rahul, thanks so much for taking us through everything that's lined up for Prime Minister Modi in Australia. We're going to keep coming back to you for more updates. We've got our top team in Australia. TV Today's managing editor Rahul Kaval is there tracking developments. Also with us, our editor Shweta Singh, who will be getting us live updates.